Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to Grand Farm's Innovation Series on Indoor Agriculture. How nice of a sight is this on this lousy winter that we are having? I just wanted to have fresh greens everywhere. So Eating Grow team, if we could make that happen, that would be fantastic. So my name is Andrew Jason. I am the Ecosystems Director here at Grand Farm, and I have my fantastic co-host Megan here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Myrdal. I'm one of the co-founders of Food of the North, and I also work with the NDSU Foundation supporting the College of Agriculture. And just want to echo Andrew, super excited to be here today and love being surrounded by fresh produce. This is awesome.
Absolutely. And Megan, why in the world, what is Food of the North and why do you care about indoor agriculture?
Well, thank you for teeing me up, Andrew. So Food of the North is a local nonprofit based here in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and our mission is to celebrate, connect, and empower our local food community and beyond. We've been around since 2015, and we work on a variety of different projects that try to elevate the awesome things that are happening in our local food community and getting more people excited about the foods that are grown in our region. So indoor agriculture, this is a new frontier for us, but we're super excited to be involved in it and learn more today.
Awesome. I told Megan I'd throw her a lot of softballs, so there's the first one for you.
So yes, thank you.
And I'm with Grand Farm, and we are a nonprofit here in Fargo that's focused on the future of agriculture and really about building and connecting a global ecosystem around innovation in agriculture. So we believe that innovation is a team sport. It only happens through collaboration. So we really are super excited about bringing these players together, creating conversations, and there's kind of 4 key areas. So we believe that innovation happens when the corporates work with the startups. The corporates are often the ones that have the money. The startups are often the one that has the great ideas and the innovation. However, the academia and universities, so we got Dr. Shetty and his team here as well today, is often where the hardcore R&D and subject matter expertise is coming from. And then when it comes to innovation in agriculture, we can never forget about the growers. So we have Larry, a longtime greenhouse grower here in North Dakota, going to be talking about his stuff. So we believe that when you bring all these players together and start creating these conversations, that's where the innovation is happening. And that's what today is about. So before we kind of dive into it, I really want to give a quick shout out to all of our Grand Farm partners that's been sliding up on the screen. This event is free. Our innovation series is free throughout it. For those that are attending in person, there is a free happy hour after this. So what more can you like?
Free drinks.
That's how we bribe people to get here. And then I also want to make sure I welcome our virtual audience. We have about 70 or 80 people around the world from 14 different countries on the call. So thank you so much and welcome.
You're missing some awesome weather in Fargo today.
Yes. So it has been, like Megan said, it's been a lousy week, 20 below weather, about a foot of snow, but
You notice that I keep moving closer to this.
You can get your vitamin D, that's for sure. Well, great. Well, without further ado, I want to welcome up our first speakers, and that's Jeff and Bart with Eating Grow Systems. And I would love to just kind of do a little background on how we got connected with them and how this whole conversation came about. Bart came up for a little crazy idea that we had around space agriculture. We hosted a space agriculture conference here. He came up and talked about his vision for how this tower here can help solve space agriculture problems and also problems on the Earth. He got connected while in town with Dr. Gary Studdy, who will also be presenting today. Then the collaboration started happening with Dr. Shetty over at NDSU, and we're so excited about welcoming them into this ecosystem. We believe that they are up to some really exciting work, and I'm so excited to welcome Bart and Jeff with Eating Grow Systems to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Andrew. So there's an old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And I think we can all agree over these last couple of years and with current events, we are definitely living in interesting times. Eden was really begun by trends research that I was doing in 2013 and 2014, where we were looking at systemic problems that were going to be developing over the next generation. The fact that our traditional farming methods that had created so much abundance were not going to continue to be functional moving into the future. There wasn't enough arable land. The fact that we were draining the world's aquifers, the fact that we were dumping nitrogen into the oceans, creating deoxygenated zones and killing off the oceans. It simply wasn't sustainable. And so we knew that we had to develop solutions. And in parallel with that as well is what many call the fourth turning. The fact that on the horizon we could see that the continued political, economic, and social disruptions within our society were only going to continue to escalate. Now, throughout history, when we reach crisis moments like this, traditionally the powerful and the governments of the world have always had one solution, no matter what political alignment you may feel, which is centralization. Give us the power and we will take care of you. I didn't want that solution. So what I set off to do was to find the best minds and to bring them together so that we could offer an alternative. An alternative in the form of decentralized food production that could empower the individual, that could empower families and communities so that they could self-determine in this time of upheaval, in this time of rapid change. Along the way, through Providence, I was blessed to meet a wonderful partner, a man that I regularly call a genius, though he tries to shrug off the compliment of Jeff Raymond. And then through great partnerships with Grand Farm Emerging Prairie, we met Dr. Stute and we met Dr. Shetty, men of equal intelligence who have a burning desire to help empower people with food independence. And fundamentally, that is the message and that is the mission that Eden embodies, which is in our mission statement, to bring food and power independence to families and communities on Earth and one day off of it. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to my genius partner, Jeff Raymond, so he can tell you how we're actually going to accomplish that.
Thanks. Well, thanks for everybody coming here. Thank you, Bart, for the introduction. He keeps saying genius, and I keep telling him, I'm the guy who stayed in the library every day when everyone else went out and had fun. If there's anything you could say about me is I'm persistent. And that's something I would love to translate. I have actually my first person from YouTube that we met via YouTube relationship here. He could tell you that one thing that I really believe in is never giving up and always just keep going. And don't let anyone tell you that because you're not a PhD or because you don't have these skills or you don't have this setup that you can't do things. And as we look at the technology that is required for indoor growing, I think what we see is a trend doing the exact opposite of what I just said. The trend is more, especially for the big guys, is we know how to do this, you can't do it, it costs too much money, the capital to get into it is too high, and what we wanted to do at Eden is say, no, we don't want to do that. So what you're looking at is a really simple solution, and for an engineer, I've heard it now quite a few times in my visits, your solution appears to be very simple. And I can tell you that if you're an engineer and you hear someone say that you have a solution that is simple and it works, I cannot feel better about the work that we've done. Simple means robust. When you add complexity to things, things tend to go wrong. So you're looking at a pump that moves water into roots and the plants grow. If there's genius in it, it's in its simplicity. And what we want to do is be able to take technology like this and translate it to the individual. So we're looking, and the families, as Bart was saying, we want to be able to have people grow food on location. When we look at large-scale indoor ag, which, by the way, Eden believes we need farmers in the fields. We need people doing victory gardens. If you have a place in your home, a deck on your patio in an apartment, you should be growing food. Right now, everybody should be growing food. If you don't know how to grow food, start watching YouTube. I know a really good channel you can go check out. It's not mine. Epic Gardening is actually really good. You can go there. He does a great job teaching people how to grow food. And when you look at the big guys, they have a lot of technology that requires you to have a lot more experience than even just having a farmer. And a farmer, by the way, as I've said all the time, they're miracle workers. When you meet a farmer, you need to thank them for the work they do because it is really amazing. What we've tried to do is take the learning curve that is involved with growing food and flatten it. Insert joke about 2 weeks to flatten the curve here. But we really want to try to make it super simple for people to get into growing food. And for me personally, I had a huge humbling experience as I went through and I started off, and I was one of those people, I'm like, I don't know what the big deal is about growing food. You need soil, you need seed, you need sunlight, air, add water, step back, and everything happens. That is so far from the truth. Today, I still think it's a miracle that we even have food, quite honestly. With the bugs, the pests, the disease, I think we have a lot of NDSU students here that you study and do R&D just to make sure we can have food. We have genetics, we have everything going into it, but what we wanted to take with this tower is just give people something simple. You know, this is essentially a roll-in refrigerator appliance that instead of storing your food, it grows it for you. And that is something that I'm very, very proud of. And of course, if you're growing food and you understand, like having a garden, you're always in front of the garden. You're always there tending it, you're weeding it, you're taking care of all those things. Essentially, you can't go anywhere. With this, we brought in technology, the kind of technology that makes a lot of sense. It is Wi-Fi, it can be connected to an app, you can control it remotely, you can monitor it remotely. And those things allow people who are really, really busy with everything else in their life, they can keep doing those things with minimal investment. So total time to manage this tower is less than 5 minutes per day. Now you have a garden that's doing the same thing, it's gonna take more and you're not gonna be able to go. So I'm very excited about the way that you look at technology as like fire, and fire can warm you or fire can burn you. And what we have here is a technology that can warm you very, very well. So I look forward to having Q&A. I'm sorry in the time I have up here, I can't go into a lot of detail, but the Q&A that's coming up, I look forward to your questions, and of course, I'll stay afterwards to talk about all the technology stuff, which is very exciting. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. Again, for those who are in person, yes, let's hear it up for Jeff. We can hear you loud and clear, virtual audience as well. So Jeff, don't go anywhere. We got a Q&A here. We do want to ask a couple of questions for you. So for those that are in person, you're welcome to stick around, and Jeff will be here for the happy hour. You can go up and touch, and he can point out things. But while that you guys have been in town, we've had a lot of conversation around the decentralization and the food desert. So, especially in North Dakota, rural communities, and also urban food deserts. So I guess talk about your big picture vision about how a system similar to this can help alleviate that problem. And I think Dr. Shetty is really going to kind of expand on that thought too.
I have no doubt that Dr. Shetty will be able to expand on everything. So it's been a pleasure meeting you, and I mean that nicely. So one of the things we've gained in experience in talking with a lot more people is when we look at large-scale agriculture that's trying to do indoor ag, which again is necessary and important, the capital cost that it takes to get those things set up is very, very large. If we look at organizations such as Plenty, which I think is amazing, they have technology that I can only dream about getting my hands on, robots from Japan and Sweden, et cetera. But their total facility costs and everything is about $25 million, according to one of the articles that I read. So if you just think about the timeline that it takes to go through permitting, getting approval, having your architect do the design, engineer approve everything, get your general contractors, get everything set up, that's pretty long. You're talking about years. Whereas a solution like this, it's truly decentralized down to the very little things, is you can get this thing set up. When I shipped this one here, I was recording YouTube. It took me 1 hour and 49 minutes on the timer. And I stopped and I was talking to people and sharing. So it's about 1 hour. So you get this tower. Within 1 hour, you have it assembled. It comes mostly, it's not IKEA. It's like it comes mostly assembled. The instructions are pretty simple. And you get it set up. You add water. You put nutrients in it. The guys at NDSU took care of that for us. And you put a seed in. You turn on the computer, tell it you planted stuff, and the computer is going to just take over from there. So if you look at the big guys, which again is important, by the time they can move into a community, we are already been in the community. We'd already be feeding people, which is what our mission is. We want to feed people. So the towers themselves are just units. They're fully self-contained.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really interesting here is, we believe that humanity needs to reconnect with agriculture, the land, sustainability. Talk about what this can do from an education standpoint, from just bringing people a real-life connection to their agriculture.
Yeah, I hear that. I think it's an urban legend back home. We have a grocery store called Trader Joe's. if you guys have heard of that. But they asked a kid in school, where does food come from? And the answer was, Trader Joe's. Obviously, it's probably an urban legend, but the idea is that people have become disconnected from their food. We don't appreciate and understand where our food comes from. Our very first customer is actually a church, and they're using the tower to teach STEM to a young men's group. So it's immediately got them into the community to do the fundraising, which made us feel really good because they're out there helping people. They're cleaning yards. They're going and talking to people, helping carry groceries. They raised the money. They got the tower, and then they're using it to teach science, technology, engineering, and math to these kids. And then they're understanding how to grow food. They're reconnecting, and we want to multiply that. Bart's been leading us in that. We want to set up a STEM initiative that we can repeat and drop. Dr. Shetty, working with you and some of the curriculum that you have, we'd like to be able to get that so people really do understand where their food comes from, but we can do it in a way that's not overwhelming. Like if you go build a garden, it's overwhelming. So that's a short answer.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I also don't know if you actually plugged the name of your YouTube page, so you want to plug the channel?
Yeah, shameless plug. Yeah, if you want to see how crazy I really am and what Bart and I have been working on, go check out therealmartian.com and ask me later why it's called The Real Martian.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Next up, we'll have Megan introduce Dr. Shetty.
That was fantastic. Thank you. So I get the opportunity to introduce Dr. Kalita Shetty and research scientist Dr. Sakar from NDSU. Dr. Shetty is the director of the Global Institute of Food Security and International Agriculture at NDSU, along with Dr. Sakar. And the mission of the Institute is to advance solutions to global food security challenges through a paradigm shift in building climate-resilient food systems and a food for health model as a value-added agriculture platform to combat climate change and global health challenges. Simple stuff, right? So we're very excited to hear more about this research and the role of indoor agriculture in their efforts. So would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Shetty and Dr. Sakar.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, thank you. So what I like, we have 14 slides, and through these 14 slides, I'll present about 9 slides within 5-6 minutes to articulate for you what are these global challenges and why Eden Grow System and indoor agriculture is important. So I'll keep it very specific and focused. So if you look at the current world challenges, you see really that most of the world, 80% of the world, is fed by close to 500 million small farmers with less than 1 hectare of land. Okay, so that's where the world is fed. And number 2, the large agriculture above 500 hectares feeds another 20%. And therefore, these two models are from domesticated agriculture, which mainly use about 10 to 15 species for most of our 90% of our species for our food. This is not sustainable, this is not healthy, and I'll tell you why. So this needs a third dimension, and that's the indoor agriculture. So that's where I think this innovation in indoor agriculture that Eden has is remarkable, because it does decentralize and gives the individual the opportunity. And when you look at this, currently, where is the world? We are a population of 7.5 billion on the planet, and by 2050, we are projected to be around 9 billion, and by end of the century, about 10.5 billion. It's plateauing. But currently, we produce enough calories for 12 billion people. We produce enough calories for 12 billion people for a population that's 7.4. So while we have 1 billion people still hungry that need calorie nourishment from macronutrients and micronutrients, we have 2 billion people going towards comorbidity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. So that is the world we are living in. And this shift happened in year 2000. Where this second dimension of food security emerged, is we have more people going towards comorbidity burden. And therefore, we have to address both these challenges with climate change in front of us. And the fourth dimension is many of the antidotes that we do not consume enough. For example, an average American consumes less than 1 serving of fruits and vegetables per day. We should be having 7 to 9 servings, and it's perishable. And so with these dimensions, the preservation of food, localization of food is very important. Without that, we cannot fight both malnourishment that's around the world, but also the comorbidity burdens. So with that in mind, if you see today, we have 1 billion hungry, 2 billion facing the comorbidity risk, so our whole food system is collapsed. So we need a very rigorous food for health paradigm, where it's not just macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, and minerals and vitamins. There are overall whole food components that are necessary that needs to come from a wider array of fresh food and whole food systems, because a lot of the good things that can fight these comorbidities are hidden, which we stripped away, or we use a narrow choice of few number of crops to feed ourselves. So with this whole hunger, undernourishment, and overbalanced system is the world we are living in as the population moves to 9 billion by 2050, and we have abundance of calories from our agriculture. Therefore, current agriculture is necessary, but we need to improve it and add new dimensions to it, and indoor agriculture is one of them. And then, if you see really, there's another so if you see, COVID has taught us the biggest lesson, that this paradigm is a failure. That means our current food paradigm is a failure. And if you see the 2 years data of comorbidity links, you can see susceptibility to COVID was highest where the comorbidity risk was high. Now, the data is still emerging. There's a data coming out of Asia. You can see a direct correlation where the comorbidity risks were higher, urban environments, especially Latin America, urban environments, the COVID susceptibility is higher. This is very natural because innate immunity is a foundation, comes from nutrition. It's not just vaccine. Vaccines and medicines, they're all important when the disease comes. But overall health is nourished by our nutrition. Our nutrition is imperfect. And you can see this, COVID has taught us those lessons. So the burden of COVID has an underlying food security, food insecurity, nutritional insecurity burden, and you're going to see those data coming as we move. And therefore, another important aspect is this is going to only get worse. And the reason is we are going to live already by 2030, 55% of the world population is going to live in urban, dense environments. And this is only going to get worse. By 2050, more than 60% are going to live in urban environments. And therefore, you need this third dimension of agriculture, which is the indoor agriculture, okay, on a health-targeted, climate-resilient model. And this needs to then integrate both the large agriculture and also the 500 million small farmers who feed us, right? They feed 80% of us, right, on the planet as a whole. And so all of this needs to work in harmony. Nothing should be kept out because all have its strength, but we can improve them to face the climate change that's emerging and also the health system that has collapsed and COVID has exposed it. So with that in mind, Eden, I think, is a very important part of the third dimension of indoor agriculture. And this can provide year-round production, improve access. It does not require major resources, as Jeff has elegantly highlighted. Reduction in carbon footprint. We can diversify the choices we have of what we grow. We can have even culturally relevant diversification in every domain across the world. In fact, today about 14 to 15 of our international partners have joined us and watching us on over the net. And then we can further design it for our local, aligned value-added food systems. And so this diversification has many facets, especially in this globally urbanized environment where majority of us are going to live. Okay? So with this perspective, we think this has high potential, and I will let Dipayan articulate some of that further.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shetty. So we strongly, from our research and our education and collaboration, we focus on the two key concepts of diversity and resilience across the food system or food chain. So we believe that, with this Eden Grow system, and I'm very excited. When I was meeting Bart a year ago, and then Jeff, and we are working with this, because last 4 or 5 years, we are working with microgreen, micro seedlings, and how to build this resilience across food chain. So we believe this can be targeted for high-value mother plants, like building, like if you have a targeted, because there are many differences or variations among the plant species, or when you have a cross-pollinated different medicinal plants or other. So you can pick or choose which has the higher bioactive or better health benefits, and we can keep this this system, that mother plants, or can be produced for the optimized, the transplant shock recovery. Because here, Jack is here, and he works with the community garden, and the transplanting is a big part in the spring, and how to build that optimization or resiliency. And it can be also targeted for food deserts, as Jeff and Bart mentioned, and also to educate communities and the societies as large. So as a whole, our concept is to build a network. So like this, Grand Farm with the Eden Grow system, NDSU and MSU, like others, all the community researchers, and as a whole, if we can build a collaboration and partnership to educate people, to bring awareness, provide training to students, and this model can be very sustainable and can be very effective way to teach the communities or even students. And it can give even opportunity for business to grow more job creation or other in rural or urban agriculture. I was working with a couple of microgreen growers here at Fargo, and after COVID, many of them were out of business. There was a lot of strain with the economic strain, and this kind of system can bring, back those, revitalize the growing and other of the innovation system for business and rural agriculture. So as well as talking about diversity and resilience, it is important to understand diversity across food chain. How can we bringing more crop diversity? So that we are fortunate in North Dakota, we have 45 or around more than 40 crops, but it's need to be diversified as a whole in urban and rural settings. And this Eden Grow system or this tower system can bring this more diversification of agriculture. And we have to understand another important part of microbial diversity, because microbe is a key part, the beneficial microbe across the soil rhizosphere to plant phylosphere to our human health and whole food chain. This improving the microbial diversity is very important, and that provides the nutritional diversity which is needed for this balanced nutrition to protect our health, improve our health and well-being. So this whole diversity together coming from ecological biodiversity improve the resilience across the food chain and human health. And this is where this is just a visual aid to bring this whole rhizosphere, plant system, soil system, and human health. And there is an equilibrium, there is a harmony. And if we improve across this all critical point and chain, it only gives us more resilient and robust system, and that can provide and advance the food security or public health solutions. So we do research with metabolic. I will not explain a lot of this, but what we target is in the plant. Plant is a very unique system, and as an autotroph, they produce the food for us. We are all depend on the plant, but the same plant also they are sessile and they cannot move. So they have their own protective system to tolerate the environmental different changes, also to insect and pest. So plant is very elegant system. They have their own protection. And those protective compounds, so we study the metabolic regulation of plant and whether we can target or improve tools or design system like this, where we can tweak the system to improve those bioactives or stress-relevant phytochemicals, which is important for plant to tolerate stress, but also important for us when we consume the food to protect against the diseases. Because all come from the oxygen malfunction, because we are in an oxygen-dependent system. So whether the chronic disease Dr. Shetty talked about or plant stress, they are all related to this oxygen and how to manage this oxygen, whether through breathing or plants through the respiration. And these all compounds provide that protection and build more resilience across food chain. So I'll just, the last slide, as I talked, we are working with this microgreen, micro seedlings, micro herbs, and this system of this Eden Grow gives us really opportunity to optimize and improve this kind of research and study, where we can even integrate the beneficial microbes or microbiome to improve the resilience and robustness. Okay, thank you. I'll be glad to answer any question, and this is our institute. And
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So we'll have like a 5-minute Q&A here, but maybe I can start off with the first question. Would love, fast forward a couple of years here in your perfect world, how do you envision this? You know, we have Jackwood with community gardens. Is this where a community approach, or is this an individual approach where every house is going to have, or apartment is going to have one of these?
Yeah, very good. So at a fundamental level, we can get the diversity of the crops where we have tools to really target it towards health preventive outcomes. That means we just not build the minerals and vitamins, but in our lab, we work on antidotes that are initial stage of diabetes. So they're still in the screening stage, and we can link with the health sector here. But we have tools to get wider array of health-targeted foods that can be linked to, for example, Jack the other day told me he has these heirloom tomatoes. So we can screen them, which has higher minerals of certain kind, which has a better antidote to, say, the first digestive enzyme, where some drugs are targeted, but we could get it in the tomato, right? So I think one of the way is to increase this diversity and target it as needed for any specific community or individual, right?
Interesting. I do want to open it up. If anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hands. But one of the things I am curious about is kind of the economic benefit. So, you know, we talked a lot about the impoverished area. One of the things that we were talking around was the ultimate idea of a digital farmer's market for produce that you're growing in your own house, and then it becomes a profit center almost for each individuals. Talk about kind of the opportunities that exist with that.
Sure, we have had some experience in this. Of course, we can look to translating in this, but even in the regular smaller agriculture back in Massachusetts, in Springfield, Massachusetts, one of the worst urban deserts of America, there were communities where 20% of the local farmers in Hadley area, they only sold 20% of their top-end produce. The 80% was plowed under. So we worked with the local food desert to see how we can revitalize it. And through the church, after Sunday service, we were able to reach out, and then it went to the apple orchards and then all others. So in the same way, I think there could be a network on which we start integrating these health-targeted outcomes with the community, with the diversification. And this gives an additional tool to widen that, because now we can put this into the community, not just depend only on the farming network. Okay.
Awesome. Well, maybe my last question for you is, so I kind of started this event off talking about the opportunities that exist through collaboration with different organizations, corporate, the startups, the university, the growers. Talk about, this is almost becoming kind of that perfect marriage between university research, partnering with a startup venture, creating community and public involvement. I guess talk about kind of how you see this forming in the university role.
Yeah, this is very exciting. I think there is a whole new platform for innovation. So we like to take our core technologies and sort of have the spin-off that can engage with the community. So we are trying to sort of cohesively take all our core technology of the last 30 years we have worked on, and to see how this can be the foundation of sustainable technologies from the food security to health across the value chain, and then work with as needed with, like Eden System is one of them. So there could be other Jack's organizations, the other. It doesn't matter whether it's for-profit or community gardens or any social enterprises, it doesn't matter. So we then start engaging and bringing the university technologies, because we have opportunity to look at the deeper side of these plant microbial metabolic systems or deeper systems, and that can be sort of translated as the demand for utility emerges, and they drive the utility, and we can align with them.
Sure. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Shetty and Dr. Sakar. You're doing great work. Let's hear it out for you.
Thank you.
I will take that from you, Dr. Shetty. Next up, I want to introduce Dr. Gary Studdy. I first met him last year when he came up for our space agriculture conference. Apparently, he's a space agriculture expert, which I had no idea there was anybody in the world that was an expert on that. But he is. But what's interesting is when you look at the technology that is often derived in indoor agriculture, it's often derived from NASA and space technology. I believe that Jeff can tell you a little bit more about how this is derived from NASA technology. But not only is he a space agriculture expert, he's also an indoor agriculture expert, and he's here right now. So Dr. Gary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back up here in Fargo. The first time I'd actually been up here about 2014 with Dr. Shetty's Institute looking at food and agriculture and food security. And what my background is, I'm a horticulturist, I'm a plant physiologist, I'm a space biologist. I originally started growing apple, peaches, plums, and pears, and somehow ended up growing plants on the International Space Station and spent the better part of my career figuring out how I could keep 4 people alive on a mission to the moon and Mars. And about 5 years ago, stepped down from that to start this, do some consulting on how I could apply that to feed those 4 billion people that are coming to Earth on this planet. And at the Space Agriculture Conference hosted here at Grand Prairie and Grand Farms and Emerging Prairie, met Bard and company and have been retained by them to help them on some of their agriculture experiments. And a lot of this technology, the lighting emitting diodes, was first introduced by NASA that has enabled this to happen. And it wasn't to make a better light, it was to make sure that when you touched it, you didn't burn yourself. Like you do if you hit a light bulb. It was so it didn't break and astronauts end up with glass going in their eyes, and you didn't have to replace it and take a lot of spares. So what this technology does in terms of its aeroponics and its lights and its remoting is taking that ethos of NASA, of going to the moon or Mars. You have to have reliability, you have to have efficiency, you have to have sustainability. And those are the things that need to be able to get remotely to ensure health and safety. And to follow up on what Dr. Shetty and Dr. Sekar were saying, what this is ideal for is maybe not producing the calories. The last time I was up here in August, I drove 100 miles and saw some of the richest farmland in America growing calories. But what I did not see is growing the bioprotectants, the nutrients, the things that give that health and safety that are going through that diet. So this is what enables those comorbidities, as was mentioned, the diseases, that health. You can't fight off things, but you can increase your vigor of your system so you can put up a better fight. And that better fight comes from those phytoprotectants, but those are the colors, the reds, the oranges, the greens, that we are able to now grow at site. So this is taking your food and health and allowing you and an individual and a community or a family to take their health to them, take responsibility back through that diet. Food is indeed our medicine, and this is a tool to let that medicine be produced locally in communities and in homes pretty much anywhere on the planet. So I am delighted to be here, happy to see that this time is coming. This is my first time, just as a complete aside, to be up in Fargo in, you're the best time of the year. And, and this is ideal because as I did that drive from Grand Forks at that 100 miles, that last August was some of the most productive farmland in America. I saw rows and rows of snow mounded up and not a thing growing. But what this enables is, instead of being dependent upon that transport up that highway, which I'm super glad was clear, you can grow it here. So once again, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for bringing this together. And those events like the Space Ag enabled me to meet Bart. It allowed me to get introduced to Shetty, and it brought them together. So now we're all gathered here in a period of short 8 months because of this ecosystem that's being supported. So thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shetty. I think Dr. Shetty has a question or comment.
No, I just want to thank for bringing this together, but I also want to thank about 15 of our partners from around the world, from Japan, from India, and Costa Rica, and Ecuador, who are on watching us. And so I just want to say hello and greet them from Fargo.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I think we have 14 countries or so represented. So that is fantastic. I always tell Gary that I think if you look outside the window right now, why not Fargo leading expert on how we're going to farm on Mars? I don't see a whole lot of difference right now. So, you know, when you think about, again, going back to Dr. Shetty's point, when you talk about innovation and kind of this global ecosystem, I'm super excited. I believe it is very late at night where our next speaker is, but I want to welcome Pablo Vidarte. He's the CEO and inventor of and developer of Bio, a biotech startup that generates electricity from nature. So I think he's based in Spain, you know, and one of the big things when we talk about indoor agriculture is the energy consumption needed. So I'm super excited to welcome Pablo live from Spain.
Well, thank you very much. Hope you hear me right now. As you heard, what we do is to generate energy from nature itself, and we do this with biological batteries, which is pretty peculiar because what we do is basically to obtain energy from the organic decomposition of organic matter in any kind of agricultural field or natural terrain overall. So one of the things that we do is to basically be able to create batteries that don't really kind of damage the environment or even transform it. We actually adapt what we have to a living ecosystem in basically any kind of device that it's able to generate energy. Just bear in mind that our company was founded in 2015. We are a biotech company, as you may suppose. And so far, the majority of our trip has been research and development. Fortunately, we were awarded by the European Parliament as the most innovative company of Europe. And even entities such as Google or Forbes, they gave us the award of the most disruptive company in the world. And actually, currently, we have a sort of 3 different patents that are basically covering everything we do right now. And overall, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to speak about the biosensor, which is basically applying these technologies to the agricultural industry. In this case, specifically, we're going to start by activating sensors, irrigation systems, and other things just with these biological batteries. We know that in a lot of agricultural fields, there are a lot of problems regarding energy, either because you need a lot of wiring or just because chemical batteries need a replacement, or just because they have to endure very harsh temperatures or climates. And that's why in a lot of cases, they don't even use solar panels, because you have to deal against dust, rainfalls, hail, wind, or even from getting stolen. And the thing is that we basically developed a system that it's basically composed of a biological battery plus a sensor and communication system on top. And the cool thing about this is that the only really new thing is the biological battery. So we could actually just use this technology for any kind of sensor, any kind of communication system, or any kind of irrigation system even. So basically what we're solving here is the issue that I just mentioned. I mean, what if I tell you that there are sensors all around the world measuring humidity, temperature, pH, and many other things, and they're pretty essential, as you may know, in agriculture to apply the most efficient irrigation and addition of fertilizers. But the problem here is that 90% of cases, in this case of sensors, are actually using chemical batteries, which normally require a replacement. It could be in a year, in 2, or in 4. But the thing is that in a lot of cases, it's really a problem, not just because you have to spend more money in batteries, but also because you actually need an army of workers to actually go there, replace them, and even find them. Because in a lot of cases, they don't even have a GPS to locate them. And if they had, well, it's not that easy. So we actually thought about a solution that solves all of these problems in a very, very natural way. And as I said before, only in 10% of cases, solar panels are actually taking place in sensors, especially in weather stations in specific. But basically, it's just because they are really expensive. I mean, if you need to place a panel in an agricultural field first, you need to place it at a certain height, like 60 centimeters or something like that. And then you have to deal against all the other things that I just mentioned before. I mean, and even getting stolen is actually a great point, as I said. So bear in mind that what I'm here speaking about is basically a battery that it's literally plugged in the ground or just placed below it. And it's basically nourishing from the organic matter that it's surrounding the battery. What we do is to basically take advantage of irrigation or rainfalls, for example. What we do with that water is to drag the organic matter inside the battery. We break it down with microorganisms, and in that process, we set electrons free and also hydrogen ions, which is really interesting as well, because hydrogen ions naturally combine with the oxygen from the outside because they are really unstable. And they produce water. So that's the byproduct of the whole reaction. We basically capture the electrons, creating a current, and on the other hand, we generate water. It's not a lot of water, but it's kind of the most ideal byproduct of the whole thing. And apart from that, what we've seen so far is that we're able to produce up to 3,000 times the energy that is actually required to make a reading and sending the signal kilometers away. So just for you to have an idea, this is the battery, at least just a part of the battery in a real field. And this is the whole thing, including the sensor and the communication system. For now, for example, we're working with Bayer Crop Science. This is actually a sensor in their own fields. In their case, they actually calculated that they would save up to 1.5 billion euros per year with this technology, which is huge, but also because they are huge in specific. But the thing is that we're pretty much open to work with a lot of companies, especially medium to large companies, at first implementing pilots just for you to see how it works, basically. And later on, to see the possibilities of actually implementing this in a large scale in your own fields. So right now, we are basically placing these sensors in very different locations. They don't really need to be as close as you see in these images. This is just a pilot to see how they work in a very kind of small environment or space, but actually we just require 1 sensor per hectare. So actually it's more or less like having the sensors that you normally have, with the exception of actually nourishing from the earth itself, from the soil itself. And also they are kind of alien-like because our idea was to actually transform the fields with another kind of concept. I mean, imagine planting these like alien-like seeds in a field, and them being actually able to generate energy to power the whole system with the soil itself that farmers are already taking care of, and being able to read the moisture levels and everything that is needed to actually apply the irrigation to the whole field. It's like a field that itself maintaining itself. So it's another kind of concept in terms of agriculture. And after all, at least a great amount of fields in agriculture right now, they already have sensors, they already have the communication system, the antenna, the cloud, the software. The only thing we actually do is to incorporate these biological batteries. And as I said, one of the things that we're doing is to even partner with sensor companies to actually already incorporate these batteries from scratch from their factories. And after all, it's a battery that produces energy in a constant basis. I mean, during day and nighttime, every time you add water or fertilizers, it gets automatically recharged. And the cool thing as well is that we don't even use metals or anything that is actually polluting, because one of the things that we do is basically a product that is totally biodegradable. I mean, it's something that will biodegrade in 10 years approximately, so that you don't even have to look for it, but actually just place another one after that long period of time. And the cool thing as well is that it's way cheaper than the current solutions. So it's basically something that covers all the main problems that you can find in terms of energy supply in these applications in specific. And also another cool thing is that these technologies, I mean, biological batteries applied to external terrains, they are actually not just carbon neutral, but they are actually carbon absorbent. They are able to absorb CO2 from the atmosphere. You here see a few numbers. There's a battery that we have that we call the panel, and another one is the sensor, which is the one that you've seen so far. But basically, the effects are pretty similar. And we actually have a goal by 2050 to reduce up to 1% of the CO2 emissions predicted by then. And overall, it's something that is obviously very ambitious, but it's something achievable. After all, we actually need time and resources, of course, but it's one of the things that we are heading to right now. So thank you very much. That was basically what we wanted to speak about here. And actually, I totally invite you to go into our website, see what we are building, because we do a lot of other things. If you're curious, we even have a Nürburgring Environments line that it's already on the market. And as I said, here we're looking for partners. If you want to work with us, we'll be absolutely happy to speak with you soon. And as I said, thank you very much. Hope you have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pablo.
It's a pleasure.
Buenas noches. Hope you sleep well tonight as well. So again, we think that growers should never be forgotten as we talk about kind of innovation in agriculture. So very excited to welcome up Larry Schumacher. He is a farmer out of Fullerton, North Dakota. He runs Larry's Hydro Lettuce, which utilizes hydroponic technology to grow fresh and tasty lettuce. So Larry, the floor is yours. I hear you're a huge public speaker. You want to spend hours up here talking, so go ahead.
Kind of impressive to be in a room with so much smart people. I was very impressed or thankful for Great Farms reaching out to me. A little bit of history about my humble self. Hi, Nancy. Born and raised on the farm. I've been playing in the dirt, lifelong gardener. When winter comes, as we all know, does happen, I thought, well, why can't we raise produce here in North Dakota? I'm a rocket scientist. So about 10 years ago, 2010, I got involved with NDSU Extension, got involved with Dr. Xuan Lee up here at NDSU, and the ball started kind of to roll. And we did a lot of research, many, many miles. And then it got down to the nitty gritty, the old saying, build it, they will come. What a process that was. But I made it happen. Currently, I got capabilities of doing over 4,000 plants of lettuce. I'm doing bok choy and kale. I'm trying my very best to do spinach, but that's another story. But yeah, it's been a uphill battle, to say the least. Many, many roadblocks, I can't begin to tell you the naysayers that I've dealt with, and I don't like that word no. That just makes me want to push farther. Yeah, it's been quite the challenge. But I see potential. The doors are starting to open tremendously for me, market-wise. Of course, there's always room for improvement. But there's a big push for locally grown, fresh produce on a year-round basis. I don't see why it can't be done. I think with the caliber of people in here, we can make this happen. This system's very intriguing to me because I currently, as Jeff and I were talking, I got a lot of wasted space because of my grow channels that I have. They're about this high off the floor, so there's space underneath and space above. They're just space. So we could utilize something of that nature. There are a lot of, for lack of a better term, empty buildings that a system like this could be retrofitted, and sky's the limit, if you will. There's a big push for vertical farming. This is one step, major step towards that. And I just think with keep the ball rolling, this will make this happen. So if there's any questions.
Awesome. You went about an hour shorter than I thought you were going to. I thought for sure.
Happy hour yet?
Yeah, right? The bar's coming. It'll be here soon.
Hurry up.
Actually, Larry's niece is on our team, so she told us all the backstories about how
yeah.
so that's okay. So anyway, you know, often the biggest question when it comes to farmers and innovation and ag technology is the ROI. Talk about kind of the upfront cost of this, how long it took to turn a profit, if you've turned a profit with your operation.
Sure it isn't happy hour yet? The upfront cost in my little operation, currently I'm raising my lettuce in metal buildings. I have artificial light, no sun whatsoever. My goal was to do a controlled environment. I live out in the country, so I don't want no bugs. I don't want the neighbor's chemical drift, per se, to kill my crop. Been there, done that. It does happen. So, and that's been a struggle, as Jeff and I had talked about. To do what I'm doing, there is a price. My pumps are running 24/7. The utility bill's really liking me. I don't like them so much. The upfront cost, I got over $500,000 stuck in my stuff. And you don't pay for that overnight. It's been a struggle. But all the more reason to keep pushing. There has to be an outlet. We have to get our heads together, figure out a distribution system. I get a fair amount of emails from people from different states. Do you ship? I've been there, done that. It costs an arm and a leg to put my produce in the mail, to go 200 miles, 40, 50 bucks. Consumers, I'm a consumer, we all are. It's just not happening. But I think we need to work on that. There has to be a way to do it. But yeah, it's not cheap.
For sure. Well, what do you think? So obviously you believe in this. You believe that this should be an adoption or a practice that other farmers should be exploring. What do you think is it going to take to get other farmers and how can to adopt this, and how can we kind of accelerate this industry up here?
That's a good question. There has to be people like myself. I mean, I'm not the only producer doing this in North Dakota. I'm from southeastern part of the state, 2 hours away from Fargo. It's a challenge, and for me, I get a lot of feedback from people. Well, I think it's great what you're doing. We need more people like you. Well, they're right. But to have the fortitude, obviously, to keep it going, a lot of people just, screw it, I'm done. I'm throwing in the towel. I've beat my head against the wall umpteen times. And I just, no. There's always a way. You just gotta don't give up. And a lot of people have, yeah. It gets to a point where you just want to throw up your hands and say, I'm done. And then just a small percentage of us, people like myself, don't want to do that. And it's, to find them people, I look at myself as a model, I guess, if you will. Not that way. Yeah, it takes people like myself, and if I can prove it can be done, well, then someone else can follow my footsteps, if you will.
That sounds like a very farmer humble mentality. So kudos to you. Maybe the last question that I have, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Is talk about the weather challenges. You know, especially I can't imagine your heating costs right now.
Yeah. Well, in a controlled environment, I would like to maintain a 70-degree temperature in my metal buildings. Well, I got propane for furnaces, and you have to move the air, obviously, for these plants to grow. So that's been a challenge this winter when it's obviously cold outside. With Mother Nature, we just went through here Monday, Tuesday, a so-called two-day blizzard. We had over 16 inches down there, minus 50 below wind chills. I got drifts as hard as rocks down there. Had some frozen water issues. It's tough in the wintertime, but I'm not giving up.
Well, good for you, Larry. So, well, let's hear it up for you and your mentality of moving forward. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larry. I promise the happy hour will get started soon here. We only have a couple more speakers left. We've talked a lot about food deserts, food sovereignty here. And one of the key areas where there's a lot of innovation happening is at tribal nations. So many of you may have heard about the Native Green Grow project happening on the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation out in western North Dakota. So this is a 38-acre greenhouse project that seeks to achieve food sovereignty for tribal members. And we're super excited to welcome Randy Lindeman, who is the lead architect. He's joining us virtually. So Randy, I hope you are here. Welcome, Randy.
I am.
Fargo. So, Randy, the floor is yours, and excited to learn more about the project.
Andrew, thank you, and thank you to Megan. And what a terrific experience so far. I've listened to the whole show and fascinating presentations. This is going to be a little bit different. I'm an architect involved. I'm not a grower or a farmer. But was asked by the 3 affiliated tribes, the MHA Nation, to help them organize a very, very large commercial greenhouse project that they've dubbed NG2, which stands for Native Green Grow. And I am, by the way, standing in for Chairman Mark Fox, who's asked me to give this presentation on his behalf. So I'm going to do my very best to try to present the tribal aspect of it. The tribe had 13 million acres in their history based on the Land Act or executive orders in the late 1850s. It condensed their sovereign land from 13 million acres down to about 1 million acres. They were Aboriginal farmers. Chairman Fox tells me that that was a very large part of their economy in their history. To roll the clock quite a ways forward, the current Fort Berthold Indian Reservation is, like it says here, on about 1 million acres, 17,000 members or so, not all of them on the reservation. They organize themselves into what they call segments across the reservation. There are 6 segments, and then the tribal chairman is elected at large. So that's how they govern themselves. For those of you familiar with West Central North Dakota, the Lake Skakawea Reservoir kind of bisects the reservation in half from kind of northwest to southeast. So they've got a little bit of a challenge geographically. Like I said, their primary, in their history, their primary economy was cattle farming and agriculture. Most recently, with the PL 638 law, the Indian Self-Determination Act, government services, and then they've got a fairly robust and active gaming enterprise. As most of you know, or if you're familiar with North Dakota, the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation just happened to be sitting over the Bakken oil field. The production from the reservation itself is about 300,000 barrels of oil per day on the reservation. And they've got, this is a little bit dated, I think there's over 3,000 active wells now. So with all of that production, I don't know if many people have seen this slide. This is a nighttime satellite image of the 3 metro areas, Chicago, Minneapolis, and Denver, in the Midwest. And then you can see in the upper left-hand corner, a nighttime shot of the Bakken oil field. What that is flare fires. So it's a little bit stunning and surprising, actually, when you see that much light pollution being caused. It gives you a sense of scale of just how much waste energy is being burned off. So the impetus for the project, the idea, and the tribe went to the Netherlands and did a bunch of research and discovered a process or a system by which, instead of flaring gas off in a flame tower, we could divert it into a refinery, process that gas that gets wasted or burned off into natural gas liquids, feed it into a device called a combined heat power engine to create power, electrical power, and heat, and then power the greenhouse. Chairman calls it seed to feed. I sometimes refer to it as flare to food, but you get the idea that they're turning waste energy into fruits and vegetables. The main idea behind it is food sovereignty. Again, in the tribe's history, they were independent ag farmers, and that was the basis of their economy. And the goal is to try to get back to that, back to the roots. And then, of course, generating jobs, the economic development, and the intertribal sales, which we can talk about at the end if you're interested. So the way it'll be done is in self-contained, climate-controlled greenhouses, glass boxes, basically. Like I said, they plan on growing fruits and vegetables, no cannabis, and then using waste energy to power the entire system. The tribe also enjoys what they call a WAPA allocation, a Western Area Power Association allocation from electrical power off the hydroelectric dam. And then as part of this initiative, they're also planning on developing what they call a gas transload and storage facility. So a quick introduction to the project itself. The project is located on the reservation near the city of Parshall, North Dakota. It's on a 40-acre greenfield site. We broke ground last April and leveled the site with a very large earthwork package. On the slide here shows the phases. Everything in yellow is phase 1. Phase 1 greenhouse with the head house and fertigation storage areas. There's also a standalone heating plant. And then in green and magenta here are phase 2 and phase 3 greenhouse growing chambers. Overall, the project itself will be 412,000 square feet of growing space. That's 3 hectares. And what did we figure? It's about a little bit over 7 football fields under glass, or 7.95, the face of your iPhone. It would take 7.95 million iPhones to cover the roof of this building. So a very, very large and complex project. So like I said, the facility has an on-site heating plant, which stores 2 very large CHPs, or combined heat power engines. It's the largest system that Cummins makes. We've got one that's already built and is on its way to the site here in about a month. The gas transload and storage facility is basically backup power. So as they refine the waste gas and turn it into natural gas liquids, the plan is to store it on site and use it as backup fuel in case power goes down, things like that. And then ultimately, like I said, there will be a refinery located right on the site. It's got a couple of really interesting and difficult engineering challenges. In fact, there are 19 engineers on the design team from all over the world. One of the ideas is to capture snow and rain water off the roof, pump that into holding ponds, filter it, and bring it back up into the greenhouse to assist with growing the vegetables. And we're also capturing the exhaust gases off the CHP, the combined heat power engines. We're scrubbing the exhaust gases with a device called the SCR, Selective Catalytic Reduction System, and then using the CO2 from that exhaust to also assist in the growing operation. Amazingly enough, the exhaust out of the CHP is only water vapor. In fact, we just got notification from EPA that even though it's a very, very large operation, we were able to achieve what they call their minor source of pollutants. So interesting engineering challenge. Like I said, just to kind of round out, the basic numbers of the facility. 3 hectares of growing chambers. There are 6 different chambers. 3 of the chambers will be vine crops, 9 meters high, so just about 30 feet of vertical vine crops. The other 3 chambers will be nutrient film technique, to grow vegetables and leafy greens. And then there's, an assortment of supporting spaces. There's about 12,000 square feet of head house, warehouse. It's going to have a very fun, kind of county fair, state fair style farm stand and produce sales component to it. And then, of course, the offices and the separate heating plant. So, Andrew, I guess that's what I can tell you about the NG2 project. It's under construction, and we believe if we're on schedule, the first vegetable will be spit out the back door sometime in November of 2022.
Wow, quite a project, Randy. Thank you all so much. Can you all please join me in thanking Randy for joining us today?
Thank you.
Amazing stuff, and something I was not familiar with that was happening in our state. So we are at our final presentation of the day, and we're kind of rounding out today's conversation about indoor agriculture with a few different perspectives on food access and what that could mean for some different businesses or organizations. So I'll ask the 3 panelists to come on up here, if you wouldn't mind. When we think about food access, one of the great opportunities that indoor agriculture presents is closer opportunities to fresh, nutritious, healthy food. And so we wanted to get a few different insights from people who have businesses or organizations that they work with that might utilize technology like this. So John Jiggs Dicey is the president of the North Dakota Grocers Association and is here representing the perspective of the North Dakota Rural Grocers Initiative, kind of thinking about some of those local, small, rural grocery stores that may not have opportunities or easy access to fresh, nutritious food. Taylor Sievertson is with the Great Plains Food Bank. She is the Ending Hunger 2.0 Health Impact Manager, so looking at a variety of different strategies that address hunger and food security issues. And then Drew Ballstead is the General Manager for Rhombus Guys Pizza. So you might think pizza, fresh produce, but they have some really awesome salads, microgreens on pizza, and all sorts of good stuff. And he's also a super awesome home culinary enthusiast. So excited to have the perspectives today. So to kind of get us started, you know, I did some brief introductions to each of you, but would you just tell us a little bit more about who you're representing, what your involvement is with Grocers, Great Plains Food Bank, and Rhombus Guys? So John or Jigs, would you prefer?
I answer to both. I have not been
Okay.
able to get rid of my nickname, so. I'm a fourth generation grocer. My great grandfather came from Norway in 1884, and in Foreman, North Dakota, so down the southeast part of the state. And 45 years I worked in the business, grew it to 4 stores, rural North Dakota, small town stores, and had the opportunity to sell, and I got out, and then found that if I moved, I told someone, if you move 5 miles away, you become an expert. And the opening at the North Dakota Grocers Association came up, and I thought, well, I can do that. I can talk groceries, and I can visit, because that's what I've done all my life. And one other aspect of that is the Rural Grocers Initiative, and that is a offshoot of the North Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives, and their initiative is to serve their area, which is the rural part of the state. So that's kind of how we got into the rural stores.
Awesome. Thank you. Taylor?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us and for considering the perspective of our food access and food security organizations. I have the great pleasure of serving as the director of Ending Hunger 2.0 at the Great Plains Food Bank. And we are the only food bank in the state of North Dakota and also serve our neighbors to the east, Clay County, Minnesota. And, you know, we're really doing traditional food banking. You know, about 50% of our work is food in, food out, thinking about how we can acquire surplus food from the network and then distribute that through our partner agency network of over 200 food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters that serve their neighbors all across our service area. COVID really uncovered, or rather, exacerbated and in some ways illuminated some of the disparities that our neighbors were facing and highlighted some of the cracks in our food systems and our economic systems that led people to need food for the first time ever in some cases. So we serve about 1 in 6 people in our service area and don't just do food in, food out because we know that food alone doesn't end hunger. So we really try to take the responsibility seriously that food security is at the heart of what we do. And in order to meet food security, we really have to work at the intersection of hunger and its root causes. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks, Taylor. And Drew.
Thanks, Megan. As she said, my name is Drew. I'm with Rhombus Guys in downtown Fargo here. We're a local pizza restaurant. You know, we, a couple of young entrepreneurs started us a long time ago. Not that long, I guess. And, you know, we try to focus on things that are local. You know, we try to source as much as we can. Obviously, that's not always possible, but especially like she was kind of saying with COVID, it's really kind of shown the shakiness of the supply chains and the way that we're able to source things. So, you know, being able to take that as local as possible helps from a restaurant perspective, and it just tastes better.
Absolutely. So, Jigs, if you want to get us started, so thinking about the rural grocers or just the grocery industry in general, what kind of challenges do you face with regards to fresh food access?
Well, I've been thinking about this after you got a hold of me. For years, we had a marvelous system in place. You know, I would order groceries on Monday, and they were there on Tuesday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we got them on the shelf. We got the produce on the shelf. We did all that, and it was very efficient. We could argue about and when I say efficient, it might not have been because the waste was also huge, because I would have to order a case of something where maybe I only could sell half of that, especially in a small rural area. So that was the issues that I would have. We threw a lot of food. You'd be amazed at how much produce gets thrown. It'd make you sick. Well, now the thing that's happened with COVID is the distribution problem that we're having. And the big players, the U.S. Foods and Cashwa and the trucks you see going down the road, they don't want to stop at these places anymore. If you're off Highway 2 or if you're off of I-94, they don't want to go there. So we now have a real issue in rural North Dakota of getting product to them. And maybe we'll get later, I can talk about some of the things we're working on, but it's hard to get the product at a reasonable price in a quantity that you can handle and get it at the time you need it. And it's really, really in tough shape right now. The distribution is bad.
Taylor, can you comment a little bit about the pantries and the 200 partners that are part of the Great Plains Food Bank and their issues with fresh food access?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, certainly echoing those same sentiments around staffing shortages with some of the bigger players that are moving produce and fresh food have led to some of those places just not being stops on routes anymore. And so what that's meant for our organization is we have to think differently about how we can get fresh produce into those spaces or depend on local growers or people who maybe wouldn't typically transport or distribute food and tap into those in new ways. But it's certainly, we have not been immune to those same challenges that you've mentioned.
And Drew, are there any challenges that Rhombus Guys faces with regards to access to fresh, nutritious foods?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of the challenges that we face as a restaurant would be the same that Jace was talking about. Supply chain interruptions, that kind of thing. Fluctuating prices, not being able to get products, having to change from one supplier to another, especially on the produce side of things. It's been, it's a perishable product. It takes, it's very perishable. So, if it takes a long time to get it there, it's not going to be good quality. And that's why we've gone to, local suppliers, indoor suppliers, getting our lettuce from places like Larry's, to shorten that supply chain and to make it as fresh as possible.
So each of you has commented on some of the challenges that you're facing with fresh produce. So looking at a system like this from Eden Grows, talk a little bit about what kind of potential you could see something like this or a system of this type providing for your respective organizations or industries. Maybe we'll start with Drew and work our way back.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is amazing. I mean, from a restaurant perspective, obviously it doesn't get any fresher, right? And when you're selling food to somebody, obviously you want to have the highest quality possible, right? And there's a quote from Thomas Keller, who's a famous chef out of California. And basically the quote is paraphrased, if you and I are chefs and we have the exact same amount of skill, if I can get better ingredients, then I'm a better chef because it tastes better. And I think that, this type of system and kind of all the things that we're talking about are emblematic of that. And if you can get better, fresher ingredients, it's going to taste better. And from a restaurant perspective, that's everything.
Absolutely. Taylor?
Yeah, I'd say at its core, food banking is about finding efficiencies in how to get food to people who need it most. And food security is really place-based, neighborhood-based, community-based. So when we think about opportunities to really leverage technology that is very nimble and very movable and small in many ways, we really open up the opportunity for people to have more control over their own food security.
And John?
I had the opportunity.
Shifting back and forth with your name. I hope you don't mind.
Confusing them now. I've got two personalities. My wife says I got 4 or 5. But I had the opportunity to visit with Jeff yesterday, and I think he thought it was going to be a 5-minute phone call, and it was an hour, and he was freezing in a parking garage somewhere. But I quizzed him on this system a lot, and I'm kind of the guy that maybe was telling Larry it's not going to work. But that wasn't really what I was trying to get at. I was trying to learn about it. But and we talked about the Hornbach. Everybody here knows what the Hornbachers is. It's the largest, probably has the reputation for the best produce and all that. How does a system like that work there? And but then going out to rural North Dakota, where we have ice, you have miles in between stores. And I think that's where this probably has its best application. Not saying, we did talk about, for herbs and that. And I know that larger grocery stores, have suppliers, but the quality isn't good. I actually worked for Hugo's up in Grand Forks for 1 year. And that was an area where they had problems. It didn't hold up very well. If they could do that in their own stores, excuse me, I could see that would work. So I believe that this system has potential. I really do. I don't know enough about it. I'm the guy that still thinks, it has to be, you have to be able to get it, supply has to be regular, it has to be good, and the price has to be competitive. Those are the three things you really have to make sure that you're able to do.
Taylor, I understand that some of the food pantries across our state may lack access to refrigeration to have even any sort of fresh produce. So can you comment a little bit about that and what a system like this could look like, where you could harvest in an immediate time for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the past 4 years or so, we've been able to really close that gap. 4 years ago, we learned that about 25% of food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters in our state did not have access to refrigeration. And through some wonderful funding that became available, we were able to really increase the availability of fresh produce through those partners. But not all of our partners are open every single day, distributing food every single day, because about 70% are run entirely by volunteers. So technology that sort of helps grow food for you would really allow those volunteer-run organizations easy access to fresh produce right there in their pantry. Checking on it 5 minutes a day is just about as much time as they'd need to spend in the pantry. Mm-hmm.
Jigs, you made the comment about the price has to work. It has to function from a price perspective. So I wonder if you and Drew could both comment on what kind of things you could see growing in a environment like this that might make sense from a price perspective for your respective industries. I mean, I think fresh herbs immediately because that is a higher value crop, but what are some things that you could see working in grocers or in restaurants that would make economic sense for you?
Well, I think, we're still a meat and potatoes state. So your basics, if you can grow your lettuces, product like that, maybe some root vegetables, you did talked about that as well. You in a rural area, you're probably going to be more, more limited. I mean, I see on the sign you can grow watermelon and all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't foresee that being the thing for rural stores. But I think you could, if you could give somebody green or leafy vegetables every day and supplement it with other items, I think that would be great. I think and this system can do it, evidently, according to Jeff, the smartest guy he knows.
Drew, what are your thoughts from the restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, herbs was the first thing that came to my mind. Even now, we go through a lot of herbs, but there's still wastage because of, just not being able to go through enough stuff, or, it comes and it was frozen, as the delivery guy was bringing it out in the -50 winter, it hits the air and it just all dies. So having it on hand and being able to harvest it at will would be, amazing for a restaurant. I think some of the other things, like it says berries and that kind of stuff, those would be really good too, because again, very perishable. Bars go through it, but sometimes not always at the level that you need before it goes off. And for a restaurant, it's a bad thing to be throwing away product that you could have used or that you weren't able to use in time. And I'm sure it's the same in the grocery.
I'm going to ask another question, and I think we'll have a little time for maybe one or two from the audience if anybody has one. So I'm a dietitian by degree, and so very interested in getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables. And as Dr. Shetty shared in his presentation, we fall woefully short on people eating the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables that we should. You talked about some issues of quality, maybe flavor might be an issue. So what are some of the things that you think about with a system like this, having opportunities for more flavorful, fresh foods that might get people more excited about eating those things?
Well, one thing that I tried to do, especially later on in my grocery experience, was tried to support the local farmer, and this was always just a summertime deal. He'd plant in May, and then hopefully in August sometime we would have, peppers and, tomatoes and sweet potatoes and sweet corn and all that. And to cultivate that with a grower and to try to get them to understand that I need this product on certain days, and I have to rely on you to be able to deliver, realizing that their season is only months maybe or a month long. But in that time, I knew, and the customer knew, that Joe Blow was my grower, and they knew he grew the best green peppers around. That had value. I mean, I might pay a little, and I tried to pay my growers what I would have to buy it from the warehouse. So I didn't try to cut their price because they were local. I tried to say, I showed them my book. I said, here's what I can buy it for. Sometimes they say, no, I can do better. And I said, well, okay, then you're a good negotiator. I'll do a little bit more. So there is a value there, and the customer appreciated it. And if we could do that on a 12-month basis, that would be really good. The grower has to be educated too on how to sell to retail. And that sometimes is hard for them to understand. That would be if NDSU could do a course on that, that would be great.
Taylor, what are your thoughts on that, getting people more excited about eating fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, gosh, I think food brings people together. And in the case of food pantries and food shelves, these are really sometimes at the heart of communities all across the state. We see a lot of food pantries that are in your church basement, where you might be celebrating with some kind of church basement casserole sort of meals here and there. But really thinking about how to use these as educational tools in pantry settings. We do a lot of recipe creation and working with Extension and other partners to do nutrition education, and being able to see and touch and feel the food that you're talking about and then use it in your own home is such a powerful tool.
And Drew?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big thing, trying to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables. The way I do it is I put it on pizza. And that tends to, that makes the medicine go down a little easier. But I think that, part of it, I think that especially, around here or just in general, I don't think people are comfortable cooking those types of things. So I think that we spoke about it a little bit, where they get some fresh squashes or that kind of thing, into the food bank. And I'm like, do people know how to cook it? Do they know how to make it, to its optimal state so that it actually tastes good and it doesn't taste, like a hard piece of something that they don't, So I think that there's an education aspect to it as well, teaching people how to actually cook it and make it its best.
I love what both of you shared there with regards to the education opportunities, and this is something that might get people excited to see it, more open to learning about it, trying it, tasting it. That's fantastic. Any questions from the audience? If not, we're getting very close to happy hour, and I can see the look on people's faces. I will just ask each of you, I always like to round out a panel by kind of just providing an opportunity for each of you to share kind of some parting thoughts, anything that wasn't asked today that you'd like folks to walk away with, just something to think. And I've gotten both the guys to start, so I'll let Taylor kick us off with parting thoughts.
Thank you, Megan. I think that there are a lot of friends in this room who value innovation as much as we do at the Great Plains Food Bank. And I think innovation makes space for putting equity first and really thinking about whenever there is an opportunity to create more for more people. I think the phrase here is rising tides lift all boats. The same is true for our neighbors in need. So thinking about equity at the center of innovation is really our goal. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk more about the Great Plains Food Bank.
Awesome. Drew?
Well, I think that, indoor agriculture and these kind of things, getting those supply chains, like I said, closer is something that's super important. And, supporting farmers like Larry is important for everyone personally, but also as a business, it's important as well. So, you can go to your local restaurant and ask them, where do you source your lettuce from? Where do you get your things? And make suggestions, or if you know people that are doing it, and then support those businesses that are supporting things like indoor agriculture. I mean, that is a huge.
Excellent. And Jigs?
Well, when I said there, about all the bad things that are going out there with distribution, that there are some things that we've been able to do with our rural grocery initiative is, our legislature is probably one of the most conservative around, and to get them to come up with the idea that maybe we need to help the rural area more than just do lip service. And really at the last session, we were able to do some things. So I think they understand that there are deserts out there. Walsh County, is that where Grafton is has started a co-op where they have a hub store, a decent sized store in Grafton. They are supporting 3 other smaller stores in the area. They're buying together, getting a better price, and they're distributing it out to those stores. They're actually buying locker systems that you go and you call in an order. The product gets delivered, and you can have frozen, you can have produce, and you can have dry grocery. These locker doors, they fill it up, they give you the code, you drive up, you hit the code, the doors open. They're refrigerated, frozen, and dry. You get your product. And so that's very innovative. And the other thing is they're doing with the distribution is they're working with the Postal Service and Great Plains Food to have the Postal Service. They're going to all these little towns. And we're working on that, and maybe Nancy knows more about it, but I'm not sure where that's at. But to get the Postal Service to actually listen to us, and now they're interested to the point where I think they're willing to try. So there are things you can do if you have people willing to think outside the box and do stuff.
I love it. Innovative, support local, all great stuff. Would you all please join me in thanking this fantastic panel? Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, everybody. Larry, I see the bar is getting set up right now, so we won't hold you from that any longer. But again, innovation through collaboration, that's Grand Farm's unofficial motto. We do believe that this is a team sport, and I just want to take a second here. We talked a lot about different ideas, so let's just dream about what's possible. Let's say that communities, whether they're rural communities, whether they're in the middle of Boston, let's say communities get access to fresh fruits and vegetables all year round. What does that do for mortality rates? What does that do for health outcomes? What does that do for people's mood? I feel so much better when I eat healthy. Let's dream about what's possible, and then let's bring the players together to help make that happen. And I think that's really what we're trying to deal here with the startups, with the universities, with the public-private partnerships. It takes everybody together, and that's really what we want to highlight. So I do want now not dreaming big, want to go into a couple of housekeeping items. So again, for those that are in person, there's an open bar. You're welcome to stick around. For the virtual audience, we really appreciate you coming. I do want to make a couple of quick plugs here for some upcoming Grand Farm events. So Livewire team, if you want to flash up our rural connectivity. So our next topic in our innovation series is around rural connectivity. So we understand that if innovation in ag tech is really going to take adoption, it's all centered on connectivity. So what does that look like? So that is going to be Thursday, March 31st. You can register on our website. And then next up is our Space Agriculture Conference. So like Bart and Gary alluded to, we believe that solving problems for space often solves problems for Earth. And that's really what our Space Agriculture Conference is. So we're going to be focusing on dreaming big. Let's think about how we're going to solve the big problems. How do you farm on Mars? The Martian proved it. Apparently there's a lot more that goes goes into it than that movie showed. The second is indoor agriculture. And then the third is satellite's impact on agriculture, which is obviously a huge play. We also really want to make that an education focus. So what is a better way to get the next generation of agriculturalists excited than looking through space? So we're really excited about that. And Megan, what's happening with Food of the North?
So Food of the North has a couple upcoming events. We host a monthly event called First Fridays at 701 Eateries in Fargo. Coming up on Friday, March 4th, we are hosting an event on the art and science of meats. So we'll be talking with a couple of local butcher shops, a meat scientist at NDSU, and a culinary arts instructor down at North Dakota State College of Science. That's at 8 a.m. on Friday, March 4th. And then coming up in April, our next First Fridays is going to be focused on the foods of lakes country. So talking about the foods that are grown around the Minnesota Lakes area, and a chef from that area who's talking about some of that. So check out our website. Would love to have you join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I do want to give one final shout out. None of this is possible without our Grand Farm partners. So thank you to all of them. Thank you, everybody. And whether you're here or you're virtual, have a great rest of your night.